We should get them monetized.
That would be, if I monetize it, it would be highly unethical if I did that.
But then we can get you demonetized and get your channel.
Ooh. Okay, so go and take that out. I do have one thing to tell you. We never did talk about what we do in case there's a drill and we have to leave. Have we talked about that?
Jump out the window.
Yeah, so this is an important thing you have to understand. The last person in each row, you have a very important job. All right? If there's something we have to evacuate the building, stand up, take a few steps back, and then run head first through the window. And then here's the part that's most important. Don't keep going. Lay on the broken glass. Why? Well, not you know. For I can pick which window to go out of. Be safe. The rest of you, I really do wish you luck. Okay, so with that, a cadre of civilization has to survive, right? That's good. If we have to leave, we go out this door. We're actually very handy here. There's a stairway right here. We go out that door. We go to the soccer field. We are actually in the front row. There are 3 rows where everyone else, all the classes have to line up. And we are the row that's the front, the closest to the school. And we're literally like right in the middle. And so that's what happens. Sound good? Any questions about that? I don't know when we're going to have a drill sometime. I don't know when it's going to be. Last year we walked to the fairground, didn't we? Yeah, I think we got to do that again. No. I mean, it's fine, but it's still, you know. And every classroom has a number. I'm really lucky. We have 2, so we're either 68 or 86. Isn't that handy? 89. 89. I mean, isn't that handy?
You're not giving me a lot of confidence in our leader.
You go ahead first.
I have a very thick skull, so I'll make it.
Actually, then since you're the only one I have confidence in, you have to hold that one. You're the only one I trust. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on. Oh, let's get to this. So, why is the phone out? Yeah, so put it away. Or I get a phone. I don't want phones. Have you ever skipped a phone down the hallway? It's really cool to skip in a stone, and we get the end, just we could film it.
With the phone, it's being skipped.
Yeah, so another phone, and then we'll skip that one. Okay, so do we run out of phones? Yesterday, how you doing? What's the assembly in Virginia? The House of Burgesses. And so we got tobacco, Ryan Roth. Oh, how did they win the How did the Virginians win the Powhatan War?
They poisoned the wine.
Poisoned the wine. And what kind of land? Oh, what's the name of the 50 acres, maybe a little bit more than indentured servants got? What was that called? Head right. Yeah. And what land did they give for the head right? Either used up or where was it? West, way out on the frontier. So they're the ones who get attacked. And we finished Bacon's Rebellion. What did the militia do at first when they started Bacon's Rebellion?
They joined the rebellion.
Because they're the same kind of people.
Not a very useful militia. Not a very useful militia.
Well, you know, to the militia's point of view, what are we defending? You know, as they saw, why would we defend you guys when we're more like them? We're supposed to defend our friends and family, etc. And did we get to the end? Oh, so we got right to the fornication laws, right?
Yes.
And we defined fornication. So let's look at this law. Now, before we ever look at the doc, I know yesterday the bell rang and I said, quickly read the first line. And I should have. This is very much related to Bacon's Rebellion. This is a problem the Burgesses have. Oh, don't forget, these are fornication laws. These were written in the House of Burgesses. So this is a law. And when you read a document, read any document, we got to do a couple things before you actually read it. What's the first thing you do before you ever read this document? Huh? Well, first I'll check the title, then check the date. Yeah? So know what you're reading and check the date. Now that seems so obvious that it's almost ridiculous, except I guarantee it, every one of us, myself included, you have something to read, what's the first thing you do? Just start reading. I gotta read words, 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 words. Done. Thank you. Everyone's done that, haven't we? We've done it. We've all done it. I understand, but make sure you read the title and read the date. And then get what you can, figure out what you can glean from the date. Information you know. And that is, I left these words up here. If we're not sure what this is, that is context. Context is the background material, the events that led up to this. As many events, people, places, things that happened that led up to the fornication laws in this context. And you have to get in the habit of doing that. Thinking about context before you ever read the document. Think about background material. Because if you don't do it, especially if you go back, this we just talked about it yesterday. It's right fresh in your head. But if you get a document where you haven't thought about it in weeks and/or months, if you haven't gone through the background material, it will literally just be words, and you will be one of those people who is clueless and making stuff up. And you don't want to be that person. Once again, that's probably something we've all done. Don't be in that situation. Think about background material. So we know this relates to Bacon's Rebellion. So Bacon's Rebellion is one thing. I want to think about it for a second. What events have we talked about in class led to this? I think we come up with 5 or 6. Everyone think about a few. Think about it consciously. Will we ever read anything else? We know Bacon's Rebellion. What other things do we know? We might have just talked about some. Even we just reviewed it. Think about it right now. Just think about it. Give me one. Now, let's start. Okay, slave trade. Give me another one. Yes.
House of Burgess wanting to power.
Say it again.
House of Burgess wanting to power.
Yeah, House of Burgesses and power. No, no, yeah. Indentured service. And Henry. That's actually 2. Very good. Have another one. What crop? What's colony? Virginia. What's the first place they settled? What's the name of the kind of company? So they want money. What wars did they fought? So there's always these wars on the frontier. The Powhatan Wars. Someone said it. Those are the kind of things. Start thinking about background material. We got head right. All those kind of things. Once you get those things in your head, the document will make more sense. If you don't do that, the document will literally just become words. Put it in context. And I will talk about this over and over again. Not only is it really important for you, just get in the habit of reading the title, reading the date, and then thinking about context. You should be able to write down 4 or 5 things, like we just went through, for every document. Get in the habit of doing that. I do it without thinking about it. I make myself do it. I just learned now. Okay. I have to think about it. And it's not because I have this great memory. My memory's okay. But once you start connecting things, that's how you get memory. And I'll talk more about this down the road. And let me give you an example of this. So all of you at the end of this year, we are near done, the semester final is done, we're getting right up to finals week. We've already done our final, we're just kind of easing out, but there will be one thing you have to do. List all the presidents. Alphabetically by height. Now you have to list all the presidents. It's something you're going to have to do. It's not that big of a deal. There's only 618. Only 5. It's easy. It's really easy. I'll give you one. I'll give you 2. One's Washington. One's Biden. Fill in the rest. Okay. But and hey, you got to know stuff. And there's going to be times you have to memorize stuff. But how many in here have memorized a list of something? Haven't every one of you? And probably you're good at it. Most of them are pretty good at it. Some are really good at it. I got a list, you go through it a few times, you can write it down. Okay, some of you are going, not so good at it. Okay, whatever, it's a skill. And so you're just kind of lucky, some people are good at it. But even if you memorize something and get 100% on it, how much do you really recall afterwards?
80% then.
No, for the test and then.
kind of goes away. I mean, if you think about it a lot, you can connect or relate it, you remember it. But if you just memorize it for a test, wrote it down, and never thought about it again, it's gone in 2 days. That's why context is important. You can think about background material. We're learning about the fornication laws. You can relate it to other events. I mean, the big thing is Bacon's rebellion. If you can relate it to other events, it sticks in your memory. Always think about relating. I will talk about this a lot, and I'll refer to context again and again. It's really important. We went through a bunch of things. You think about it now. It's in context. Now read it. Tell me what this thing is trying to achieve. Tell me what the document, and just read the first paragraph. Everyone read it. And you can write on it, underline key points. That's a good way to do it. Depends on what kind of thinker you are on this. Okay. Where's your documents?
It was inside my house. Inside my house.
These are safe. Let me get it. Stop blowing your thought. Okay, next to it. What did it create? Think about it. Just jot down in the margins of this, what did it create? What did it create? What's it, 3 sentences? It changed everything. Everything. Because everybody's going to copy this. Okay, jot down a few words, what it created. So we got the problem. We know what was happening. Fornication. We talked about the end period, who is involved in this, right? What did this do? What did this create? You have that? Anybody not sure? Are the words a little bit hard to read? Do you know what bond means? It says, in the 3rd line, it says, shall be held bond or free. You know what bond means? Yeah, so like, a bond is like your title, the owner, title of ownership over a human being. That's the bond. A bond is it's a legal document, basically. So what did it create? Yes. It's coming. Yeah. Racism will come out of this. Now, the rest of the slave codes we talked about yesterday combined would make it important, but this is the biggest of the slave codes. But how? What did it do? Yes.
I don't know, do you have second class people, like, that you aren't born, or from like 2 parents that are married with the same race, that's your second class of your slave, right?
Even though it says Negro women's children, it's not so much color of skin, it's the condition of the mother. But you're on the right track. It all depends on the mother. The child is going to be slave or free dependent upon the mother. Let's look at this really quick. So it says in that line, all children born in this country shall be held bond or free according to the condition of the mother. Meaning, if that mother is a slave, that child is a slave. And what if they just created? Now, it's true it's created racism. I mean, racism will come out of this. Racism did not exist in any way that we would recognize today before laws like this. Did not exist. Would have been foreign to somebody. Made no sense at all. What did it create? Children of their servitude. Children of slave mothers will be slaves. What do they just create? Huh?
Perpetuity of slavery.
Inherited slavery. It's permanent. And that's the big thing. Permanent slavery. From now on, the fornication laws, and everybody's going to copy it. Before, that did not exist. It was not clear. Slavery was much more like indentured servitude. Now it is permanent. Now, color of skin is going to come into this, but not quite yet. And when they put down Negro, well, they weren't talking about so much. Or they're talking about any slaves. Yes, it was referring to people of non-European descent, but the big thing was slavery. Now it's permanent. So here we have the father. He now doesn't have to worry about giving them his name, which means inheritance, which means title, which means wealth to that child, because the child's a slave. Not to worry about it. And so, his answer. Oh, I should add. It does say, because remember I told you originally slavery was about heathen, they said anybody wasn't Christian. If any Christians commit fornication with a Negro man or woman, he or she, if any, shall pay double the fines imposed by the former act. Now let's be clear about it. It's the master and slave. Is the master going to pay this fine? No, just work their slave to get the pay. Or punish the slave. Remember, they owned them. So, a couple things are going to come out of this. First off, if you have permanent slavery, who doesn't have permanent slavery? Say it again, who? Indentured servants. They're free. Why? They have that contract. Here, they don't have a contract, so they can dictate the law. It's permanent. Oh. Fornication is happening. Did that change? Think about the masters now. What do they get out of this deal? It's an incentive to keep raping their slaves. I want you to ponder that for a second. Was that on purpose when they made the law? Oh yeah. They didn't want to quit doing what they were doing. But now they get profit out of it. I should add, that is why virtually anybody who is a descendant of a slave has probably European ancestry, African ancestry, and American Indian ancestry. Makes sense, right? They all do. We're the United States, a hodgepodge of people, and it would make sense. This is one of the most important laws in history. It literally turned overnight. Because what a wedge that put in with everybody. Boom. Fornication. And here they're implying we're getting rid of it. Now the next one's going to be about servants. And we're going to read that at the beginning of class tomorrow. But it literally says for the restraint of the filthy sin of fornication. Meaning, see, we're doing something, right? That's why if you ever see laws that are done in Congress and if they ever have the word reform in it, watch your wallet. They're maybe not telling the truth. Okay, so that's why we have to know these fornication laws, because slavery changed forever after that. It went from this kind of pool of labor, and it was, this actually is something from, this is from South Carolina. They have the National Slavery Museum there. There's an old slave market in Charleston. I'll tell you about Charleston story when we get there. And it talks about this. Servitude was not always hereditary. Now, it is hereditary. They talked about it there. And so, everything changed. Everything changed because of this law. This is the most important of the slave codes. So if you have slave codes down, make sure you have fornication laws, and you talk about making slavery permanent. This is the most important one. Every other colony followed this. English colony, New Spain followed it. And once you start making this dividing line, first it's law, but then everything changed. And so this is something, I know I'm repeating this, so if you didn't have this in your notes, but make sure you have. Europeans will be free someday. Someday they'll be free. And someday they're guaranteed those rights. Those are the slave codes. Now, people of European descent, usually, remember, they had that contract and they had that citizenship. It wasn't color of skin necessarily. Slaves, more and more slaves became associated with African descent, darker colored skin. They're never going to be free. It's permanent slavery. Slavery works somebody to death, and if they have children, work them to death. That's literally what it is. And they're never going to have rights. And you start out with law. Well, first off, you have an economic system. You have these plantation systems. They're trying to get as much money from tobacco as possible. They have debts to pay back. These are desperate individuals, these planters, for the most part. They have debts to pay. And they don't want to lose their position if they won't be able to pay back their debts. And then you create laws that helps perpetuate that system. So you have an economic system, legal system. What's going to happen down the road? So first off, it's going to be like, oh, we have more rights. It's by law. Pretty soon that law becomes, how long does it take for something that was legal, they order it to become natural? How long? Generation. Maybe 2 generations. It just becomes normal. Remember what I told you. If you work for a wage back, a wage earner who didn't own their land or the place to work in the 17th, into the 18th, and into the 19th century, you basically thought you were a what? A what? What do you need, according to Englishmen, to have liberty? Which is land. If you don't have this land, if you don't own it, what are you? Liberty, you're just like a slave. Do you consider yourself a slave if you work for a wage? That literally had to be beaten into the heads of Americans in the 1830s and 1840s when the Industrial Revolution began. They didn't like that. You gave everything away. You go to someplace else to work and you have no freedom for 8 hours a day or 12 hours a day. Now we just accept it. That's normal. Why? We now think it's natural. They literally have to pound this into your skull. By the way, what's part of the process to pound this into your skull? You're sitting here. Yeah, you're being indoctrinated. You don't believe me? All of you follow, don't you? You all eat lunch when you're told to eat lunch. You all leave the periods when you're told to leave the periods. You follow orders. You sit here politely. You're punished if you're late. Doesn't that sound like a job? You're being trained. You do quite well in school, all of you. So you are all ready to obey and follow orders. Listen to me. So it happens all the time. It becomes natural. And think about the difference. Some people have more rights than others. What's something that ties them together? Lighter colored skin, darker colored skin. If it's natural, why do the lighter skinned people have more rights? Why? Well, we know why, I just told you. But once you start thinking it's natural, and it's always been that way, it's color of skin. They created this new concept of race, and race implies there are differences. It must be that lighter colored skin are what? Right? Better, superior. There must be something good about it. I mean, it's amazing when we got now so ingrained this, you think it's always been like that. And so I had someone first period ask me a very good question. They said, so when Columbus or the Spanish arrived in the New World, I thought they were being racist. No, that wouldn't even have nothing to do with it. What had that to do with color of the skin? Because we're taking what we now just are so ingrained and think it's natural and place it back in 1500. No, not then. I haven't quite developed yet. Just as you think you're going to get a job. Or get a job and work for a wage, and that's natural, and that's freedom. No, that's going to be ingrained. It's going to be changed. And so, what is racism? We got to get this definition now. It's more than just prejudice. It's more than just being a bigot. It's more than just deciding you don't like somebody for the way they look. You know, I don't like that person with plaid eyes, so I'm going to treat them differently. I think it'd be kind of cool to have plaid eyes, but that's racism. So, one character is something about one color, by color of skin. And this is new. But let me repeat. Obviously, people can tell others with different color of skin. You just see it. You just know it. Can everyone read that okay? Okay, that's what you have to, something I'm just going to expect you to know. But it's more than just disliking somebody. Because remember, it started with an economic system, law, and then it just became custom, cultural. This is the way it is. And so, how does it happen? We have the economic system, the legal system, and now it just became natural. What do we consider natural? That's our culture. We just don't know any different. That's the way it is. And once you decide that one color of skin is superior to others, won't that justify European settlers to the United States taking land from American Indians? They don't know how to use it. We're the ones naturally supposed to have it. Or colonizing other places in the world. This is similar to the relationship between the sexes. Men are superior. That's the way it's always been. And women are going to be taught to accept that. And boy, would that be a fight. That still exists. And we'll talk about how that's going to change. But that's always going to be, hey, this is natural. It's always been that way. So, that's where we get racism. And why did this happen? Those guys at the House of Burgesses weren't sitting there going, all right, we're going to create racism. This is our plan. We're going to divide everybody by color of skin. And this is going to go on for hundreds of years. Brilliant, let's do it. It's going to go on so long and no one's even going to remember Bacon's Rebellion or the House of Burgesses. We'll do it. Great idea. Of course not. This is why they did it. They wanted to maintain their power. They wanted power. Their economic, political, and cultural power. They didn't want to give it up. That's why it's great. And that's why racism is so tricky to this day. Because it did not start with just, I don't like you because you look different than me. Okay, well, we can get over that. That's relative changing of attitudes. And it's a lot more complex because it started with these guys at the House of Burgesses. I should add, this is also very important. It's not you who did this. This happened in our past. It definitely affects us, but it's not. Since this kind of color of skin and dividing people, its creation in the 1700s, it is not natural for us to divide each other by color of skin now. And those on top stand power. And so the whole goal is to unify people or disunify them. Unified people, skin color is more important than class. And so the leaders of the House of Burgesses can say to indentured servants or those who are former indentured servants, poor farmers barely have anything. You're closer to me than them. They're slaves. They're inferior. We're in this together. Oh, sure, you don't have a right to vote or any power, but we're close, right? Because we have this relatively the same color scheme. And don't unify with them. Remember, Bacon's Rebellion, people of all different colors came together. Here, disunify, divide people. And so the thing about it is that this is going to be known as, down the road as, and I'll refer to it as, Bacon's rebellion. Go on and on throughout history. What a way to divide people. Divide people up. And so you can divide it by color of skin or by sex or anything else. Divide people up. And so you get people thinking, well, you know, these poor people in the Western Virginia, you know, I don't have much, but I'm what? I'm what? I don't have much. And we're going to see this time after time. And I put up a few examples. We're going to see this. Through the Civil War, the vast majority of Confederate soldiers who fought for the Confederacy, and the sole goal of the Confederacy was to maintain the system of slavery. You know, and you'll read a couple of their secession notices, it's all for slavery. No doubt. They were never going to have slaves. Yet they fought to the death to maintain that system. Because they thought if you get rid of slavery, I lose that one little thing I have. I don't have much, but I'm better than them. You saw the same thing in voting rights. When there was an effort to try to, in the 1890s, they called it the Fusion Party of the poor in the South. This is from North Carolina right here. Black and white, poor, freed slave, or descendants of former slaves called freedmen, poor whites. They called it the Fusion Party. And here's attacking it as corrupt, and they said right here, Negro rule as opposed to the white rule. What side are you on? And it was quite effective. It's going to lead to a thing called Jim Crow law. Some of you might have heard of that. We'll get to it. Labor, they divided workers, black workers, white workers, so they would not unify together. One of the most famous is school integration. Has anyone ever heard of Topeka? I'm sorry, Brown versus the Topeka Board of Education. Some of the state, Brown versus Board of Education. What did that do? It ended separate but equal schools, integrated, it kind of integrated schools. It's complex. We'll get to it. Well, these states that had it didn't want it to happen, didn't want it to work. And they delayed. 1957, 3 years after it, Little Rock Central High was the first school in the former Confederacy to begin to integrate. And they picked 8 black students to go to an all-white school. And the important thing is when the school board did it, they didn't want it to work. So 8 students came. They picked Little Rock Central High. They picked a school that was in a working class, relatively poor, all-white neighborhood. Why? That. What's that? What was the reaction of the parents? My kids aren't going to have much. They're going to have a tough life. But what's the one thing they're going to have? And it would be taken away if you went to go to the schools. And what did they do? They protested. The governor used that as an excuse, called the National Article of Schools. That's what they did. You'll see this time after time to divide people and use color of skin, use lots of things, but that's what it is. That's, I mean, it's infiltrated our schools. Here, keep white schools white. And it was relatively effective. Now, President Eisenhower, who was no friend of civil rights, but furious at the governor, he sent in the 101st Airborne Division to force the school over. We were going to integrate at the point that they annexed. That's when they told the white parents. And so, that's Bacon's Rebellion thing. And so everybody write down. So, that's why this is so important. This is so important. And that's why I went through it. That's why I talk about it. I'll refer to Bacon's Rebellion thinking. We'll see this time after time again. It is not natural. It is not necessarily you or anybody else did it. It's not, we're not indicting anybody because this happened long ago, but it's important for us to understand because there are reasons we are the way we are. The good and bad elements, which yes, we have both, right? Let me rephrase that. Here we're all good, but out there, right? Have you seen those people? Well, there's reasons why we're this way. It wasn't accidental and it's not natural. So let me do something else real quick. Let's do the other colonies real quick. We'll start with that. The New England colonies, while this is going on in New England in 1620. Now, I should have, when they got to New England, I'm going to do this really quick. Here's Virginia. Here's New England. It's still further south than England. So they thought it'd be nice and warm. New England can be bitterly cold. The climate's a lot different. Gulf Stream. Here is where the first colony, Plymouth. Here's one of those maps. Here's Cape Cod. Plymouth is right here. This way's north. So that's another one of those where they didn't draw in the north. That fascinates me being a map person. But let me tell you really quick about a couple of the colonies. So Plymouth was one of the first one, 1620. Okay, they're related to the Puritans, but they thought the Puritans were too accommodating. What did they call themselves? Separatists, right? What do we call the separatists today? What do you refer to them as? Oh, they always say they're pilgrims. That came later. The separatists, they believe in predestination, heaven or hell, creation. We talked about this last week. They actually fled England and went to a Calvinist, which believe in predestination, majority country. Holland, it actually was part of Spain. They're in the middle of the Civil War. But Holland was too cosmopolitan, and so they had to get the heck out of there so that their kids might grow up believing crazy things like science and things like that. So, a few separatists, they decided to go to New England. They had enough for one boat. What boat? The Mayflower. They didn't have enough colonists. And so they put a call out for people who weren't separatists, but they just needed human beings to go. Half of the people on the Mayflower were not separatists. They thought they were going to Jamestown. They thought they were going to get gold. They had no idea. Boy, were they surprised when they arrived in November up here, where it's bitterly cold, colder than today, and windswept, a nightmare. They were furious. And those people who were not pilgrims and or separatists made it very clear. We don't want to be here. We know we're further north than here. We're going to take the boat and go south. Now, the separatists were terrified of that. They had this land claim from Britain. They gave this land claim. And so what they did is, on the Mayflower, they rang the bell. Oh, it's lunchtime. Isn't it? It's just wrong to have lunch after third period, isn't it? Yeah. Bring the documents for tomorrow. You don't have to read them, but I'm not going to do a quiz tomorrow. But that implies there'll be a quiz very soon afterwards. Quiz take 10, 15 minutes. Have a good day, everybody. Be excited to get more testing tomorrow. Give me this. You have it. It's not a big deal. You just forgot to find it out.
I'll be going tomorrow.
Why? I don't golf, right?
No,
And
you
finish the rest of chapter 3. It's not very clear in America. In America. And we'll see. Goodbye. Oh, and then you got iReady stuff. You know, you have to make it up. Yeah. Okay. We should do it. Yeah. And so you have more time tomorrow. You do the reading. If there's any time left, you can work on that. Or you'll give you more time. Study hall or some other time. So don't worry, you'll get my time. I only got like 15%. You'll get more time. It just took a while to get going, yeah. And that's all it takes, 1 or 2 problems, and then you start getting, yeah. Don't worry about it. You'll get time. You'll get time. Don't worry.
Is the quiz a very technically?
Huh? Well, I was going to do it tomorrow, but now I forgot what shirt first. I'm going to move it. I might add a couple more pages in. Also.
So it's going to be over the pages.
Probably the whole chapter. It's only about 10 pages.
Oh, yeah.
And it'll be literally matching in terms of the normal. But I'll probably make it enough.
What?
Wait.
I switched to your first period because I do teacher's period.
Oh, yeah.
And
I didn't know that you were in there.
Yeah.
Because I was going through it.
Yeah, I don't want to say that.
Okay, sounds good. You being
I'll be first period tomorrow.
first person. Yeah. Oh, well, don't worry about it. And we'll find, yes,
Us three are gonna be gone.
why do you hate America? Cross country? Volleyball, yeah. I get, what's cross country? Well, I looked at the schedule, but there's like 6 things, right? I keep everything. Where are you guys going again? Okay, I did, I'll be, are you seeing the ninth and?
Yeah.
It's whatever. And so finish chapter 3
Okay.
of America. I gave you the first one through page 126. I just didn't write that up. So I think it's like 126 to 135, I think, are the page numbers. And then that would be the quiz.
Okay.
And then, you know, it looks like there's gonna be a lot of people. So I'm not gonna do it. I don't know if it's not gonna be either. That's not. Yeah, just once. And I'm gonna do another thing where we're gonna document it. I just gave that to you.
Sounds good.
Sound good? And I record files.
Thank you.
And yeah, and so Friday, today's Wednesday.
Yes.
Yeah, the 4-day week. All right, we'll see you.
Yes. Bye.
I'm not really hungry.